Right now, somewhere in the world, two people are sitting close enough to feel each other's warmth, and neither of them fully understands why. Not why they chose this specific person, not why this particular face, this voice, this particular way they tilt their head when they laugh. The feeling arrived before the explanation did. It always does. And you know this because it has happened to you too. We call it falling in love. And the word falling is the most honest part of the whole thing, because you didn't decide to fall. You just found yourself already in the air. Modern life has given us 1,000 ways to explain this away. Dating apps with algorithms, personality tests, attachment styles, compatibility scores. We have turned the oldest human experience into a series of metrics, as if you could measure the thing that has driven people to cross oceans, write symphonies, and stand outside in the cold at 2 a.m. just to be near another person for 5 more minutes. But here is what nobody talks about. The science of love, the real science, not the greeting card version, suggests that what you feel when you fall for someone is not a modern emotion dressed in ancient instincts. It is the opposite. It is an ancient force that your modern brain is desperately trying to make sense of. And it was already ancient 50,000 years before anyone invented language to describe it. So what did it actually feel like before the words? Before the loves songs, the poetry, the algorithms, the first dates with their careful performances of being someone slightly better than you actually are. What happened in the body and in the mind of a human being who had never heard the word love but felt everything you feel right now? Most people assume that love, real love, the kind that binds two people together for years, is a modern invention, a luxury. Something that emerged once life became comfortable enough for humans to think about more than survival. Once we had shelter and food and safety, we had room to invent romance. This is a satisfying story. It is also almost completely wrong. The assumption goes deeper than that, actually. We tend to think of ancient humans as living in a kind of emotional poverty, driven entirely by instinct, pairing up for reproduction, moving on. Efficient, cold, transactional, like animals, we assume. Not like us. But here's what nobody tells you. The evidence tells a different story, and it tells it loudly. In 2013, anthropologist Helen Fisher at Rutgers University published a synthesis of cross-cultural research that found romantic love, not just sexual attraction, not just attachment, but the obsessive, all-consuming pull of romantic love, present in 147 out of 166 cultures studied, cultures separated by thousands of miles, with no contact, no shared language, no shared mythology, and in every single one, the same thing. The same sleeplessness, the same obsessive thinking, the same physical sensation in the chest. The answer is stranger than you expect, because what Fisher found was not a cultural artifact, something humans invented like writing or agriculture. She found evidence that romantic love is a fundamental drive, more like hunger than like preference, more like thirst than like a decision. The brain on new love, she found, looks almost identical whether the brain belongs to a 25-year-old in Tokyo or an elder in a remote Amazonian village. This means that somewhere, roughly 300,000 years ago, the first human who ever existed was already capable of feeling exactly what you felt the last time you fell. That should stop you for a moment. Because if that is true, it means this feeling is not a product of your civilization. It is a product of your species. And the question is no longer whether ancient humans fell in love. The question is what it was like when they did. To understand what love felt like before civilization, you have to understand what the brain actually does when it falls. In 2005, neuroscientist Arthur Aron at Stony Brook University put people who had recently fallen in love inside an fMRI machine. He showed them photographs of their partners, and what he found was not the activation of the brain's emotional centers, as most researchers expected. What he found was the activation of the brain's reward system. The same circuitry that lights up when you are hungry and smell food. The same circuitry activated by cocaine. Think of it like this. Your brain has a system that says, this matters, Pursue this, do not stop. It evolved to attach to things your survival depends on: water, food, warmth. What Aaron discovered is that the brain codes another person the same way, not as a preference, as a need. That same circuitry was present in the skulls of every human ancestor who ever lived. So when a Homo sapiens in southern Africa, roughly 100,000 years ago, encountered someone who made that system activate, they did not experience it as a cultural concept. They experienced it as urgency, as a physical pull behind the sternum. The same pull you recognize immediately when you feel it, the one that is impossible to explain to someone who has never felt it, and completely unnecessary to explain to someone who has. But here is what that means in practice. In a world with no privacy, no candlelit dinners, no first text messages carefully rewritten 4 times before sending, love had to express itself differently. Archaeologists have found evidence of personal ornamentation, beads carved from shells, ochre body paint, deliberately arranged feathers, dating back 100,000 years. These were not tools. They served no survival function. Researchers like Francesco De Rico at the University of Bordeaux have argued that these objects were communicative. They were a way of making yourself visible, of saying without words, "Look at me. I chose this. I made this. I am more than what you can see at a glance." And that impulse to decorate yourself for someone, to become more than ordinary in the hope that they will notice, you know that feeling. You have felt some version of it every time you got ready to see someone you were falling for. But the brain chemistry is only one part of the story. Here is where it gets strange. Modern love happens largely in private. You fall for someone across a table, in a room, in a string of messages lit up on a screen. The world mostly leaves you alone while it happens. Ancient love happened inside communities of roughly 25 to 150 people, constantly watched, constantly visible. Your emotional life was not your own private experience. It was something your entire group could see unfolding in real time. Anthropologists call these groups band societies. And within them, the social consequences of who you chose and who chose you back were immediate and permanent. There was no leaving, no moving cities, no quietly blocking someone and pretending they no longer exist. If you fell for someone in your band and they did not fall back, you would sit across the fire from them every single night for the rest of your life. Think about what that does to the experience of love. Not just the joy of it, but the risk of it. In 1999, psychologist David Buss at the University of Texas published research showing that romantic jealousy, the specific consuming anguish of believing someone you love is drawn toward another person, triggers the same threat response in the brain as physical danger. Your heart rate rises, your palms sweat. Your attention narrows to a single point. This is not a modern neurosis. Buss found it consistent across 37 cultures and all age groups. Now, place that feeling inside a group of 60 people who sleep within earshot of each other, hunt together every morning, and have no distance to escape into. The emotional intensity of love in that environment would have been almost unbearable, and almost unbearably alive. Here is the statistic that should stop you cold. Evolutionary psychologists estimate that the average ancient human had romantic experience with dramatically fewer partners over their entire lifetime than the average modern person encounters on a single evening of scrolling. Not because they wanted less, because the world was smaller and every feeling was larger for it. You have access to infinite connection. They had access to almost none. And yet, the neurological fingerprint of what they felt, the activation patterns, the hormonal cascades, the obsessive circling of a single person's face in the mind was chemically identical to yours. They felt everything. In a world with almost no one to feel it with, the implications of that are still moving through you, even if you haven't named them yet. Here is what all of this is actually telling you. You have been taught in 1,000 quiet ways that love is something that happens to emotionally sophisticated people. That it requires the right setting, the right language, the right context. That it is a high-level human experience. Something that evolved late, arrived late, belongs to the civilized and the literate and the connected. But the science says the opposite. Love, the real mechanism of it, the dopamine and norepinephrine and oxytocin, the obsessive cognition, the physical ache of proximity and absence, all of it predates language. It predates agriculture. It predates fire, possibly. It was running in human bodies before human bodies knew how to describe it, before there were words for longing or tenderness, or the specific grief of wanting someone who is standing right in front of you. This is the thing that changes everything. What you feel when you fall in love is not a product of your culture, your upbringing, your era, your algorithm, your playlist, or your particular psychology. Those things shape the edges of it. They choose the face it lands on. But the falling itself, the vertigo, the hunger, the quiet devastation of it, that was already built into your body before your body was yours. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford argued that the complex social bonding mechanisms in humans, including pair bonding, the tendency to form deep one-to-one emotional attachments, are older than our species itself. That they were already present in Homo heidelbergensis, our evolutionary predecessor, who walked the earth more than 700,000 years ago. 700,000 years. That means that every human being who has ever loved another human being, every one of them, from the person sitting closest to you right now, back through every generation, through every ice age, through every continent your ancestors crossed, through every night they lay awake in the dark, thinking about someone, they were all running the same ancient program, not similar, the same quickening of the pulse, the same intrusive thinking, the same irrational certainty that this specific person out of all the others is the one that matters. You did not fall in love. You participated in something 700,000 years old, something your species has been practicing since before it was your species. Tonight, somewhere inside your chest, an ancient mechanism is either running or resting. If it is resting, it has run before and it will run again. If it is running, you are not confused or overwhelmed or irrational. You are doing something your species has been doing for 700,000 years in the dark, without language, without certainty, without any guarantee at all. You did not invent this feeling. You inherited it from every ancestor who ever sat across a fire from someone and felt the world briefly reorganize itself around a single face. From the one who carved a shell bead in the dark, not because it was useful, but because they wanted to be seen. From the one who lay awake in a cave while 60 people slept nearby, thinking about someone sleeping an arm's length away, unable to cross the distance. All of them felt what you feel. All of them were undone by the same thing, and none of them had a word for it. They just had the feeling. Enormous, undeniable, exactly like yours. There is something quietly devastating about that, and something quietly beautiful. Every poem ever written, every love song ever sung, every message ever unsent at 2 a.m., all of it was just an attempt to describe something that was already happening in human bodies long before there was language to contain it. The feeling was always bigger than the words. It still is.